Street of black light. Street of black light. Street of black light. Down, Papa, don't you blow.
Welcome to the next part, starting the fuselage, or otherwise known as the fuzz. Now, this is the complicated bit, because if you have ordered your model to have an internal combustion engine, otherwise known as an IC, then you can just carry on with your instructions as normal, which will look like this. Okay, if you've ordered it to have an electric motor, then you will need the instructions for the ME109 as well as, and they look like that. Now, I phoned Steve at Cambrian Fun Fighters, and he says, I just haven't got around to it for doing it for the Mustang, and he didn't include these instructions. So I phoned him up and he very kindly emailed them over, and I managed to print them out okay. I have to add, I did it on the works printer. Guilty. Okay, so when it comes to the fuzz, you have to incorporate whatever it tells you here, but not verbatim, because don't forget this is for the ME109 or the BF109, depending on your candor. So I'm just trying to find a page here. Yeah, you'll see that you have this different front sections and so forth, and that is for the battery compartment. But go through the parts you get, you'll get them in extra bags. They're not exactly labelled, so you will get parts that look like this, and you'll be scratching your head because there's nothing on the drawing showing this, and there's nothing in the instructions to help you, guide you with this. So I'm showing you that basically this is former number 1. This is the motor mount, and you mount your motor on here, but lay it against the drawing obviously to line it all up, and it will look something like this. There are other parts of course, but when you get to this bit you're going to get confused. So that's what it should look like. Okay, happy with that? Okay, jolly good. Some other bits you will find that don't seem to look right is this. This is former number 2. It is different to the one on the drawing. Please take that into consideration. Also, mark up where your formers go on the inside, remembering there's a left hand and a right hand, and you won't go far wrong. Next, this is former number 4. You'll get a dowel with it. Now, you'll probably find before you start, get your dowel, see if it fits. That is a very tight fit, and I've actually put that in the drill, and I've used my glass paper and I've sanded it down, and it's still a bit stiff. So you can either drill out that hole or turn that down a little bit in the chuck in your drill. This is a 6mm hole. I think it's supposed to be a 6.5mm, but I'm going to turn this down so that this will slip in here with ease. Okay, now that supports the back end of your wing, and this goes into the air intake at the rear, and you want to make sure that it fits both of those holes. So you have the option either drill out the hole slightly or turn this down slightly. You have other holes at the top, and these for your snakes, your controls. Unless you're going to use the rudder, you're only going to need one of them, and at the moment this is a 5mm hole. I haven't checked the snake to see whether it's going to go through it or not, but at some points I will. So I just sort of point out these items before you start going mad. These go in the rear. Please make note of them. They also have the 5mm holes in for your snake. This part, now if you get this part, which is not numbered, this is part 33. Okay, that's part 33, and that goes in the battery bay as part of the lid. And actually, in conversation with Steve, he said that's optional, some people leave it out. And you'll notice you'll get the bulkhead, the front of the cockpit. This is part 3, or former 3. Okay, these two parts, please take note. Let's get the camera. Where's the camera? There you go. They're beveled here. Okay, and they're beveled at the top. Now they're supposed to go like this, and they go at this angle like this. That's the back of the battery tray. So there's two halves. Okay, this half will go on the fuzz permanently, and the front half is part of the battery tray. So when you lift the battery tray off, it comes off like this. Okay, like this. So just be aware, because you will get those parts. I had to sit down for quite a while. Oh yeah, and this part 32. If you find this, it's part 32. Okay, that also goes in the battery tray. Maybe this is the optional one, can't remember. But I had to sit down for quite a while and work this out. Although I have already built the BF109, if you like the ME109 or the ML, whatever you want to call it, it was a few years ago and I couldn't remember. Now, you will get a bag with these ply parts in, and that is for the servo. 31 is to mount your servo and the wing. You get part 20, 27, these are marked, 26, 31, which is obviously the servo mount, and part 27. But the reason I went through that is because one of them is not marked, and it took me a while to figure out what it was for. So they're all to do with the wing. Okay, so this is just knowing what your parts are. Now then, did I run through the numbers on here? I don't know that I did. Right, this part is part 35. This is foreman number 1. This part is number 34. Okay, and I can't remember if these were numbered or not, but they're so different to anything else, you can't really go mistake it. Your front end just slips in like that, and they go all together a bit like a jigsaw. Once you spend a couple of minutes looking at it and staring at it, it suddenly becomes apparent as to how that goes together, and that just slots in at the back here. They slot in here. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody was happy before we start, because if you don't study it before you start, you're going to get into problems. I don't want you to make a mistake. I want you to get it right first time. Okay, right, let's begin. So here we go. You take the 5mm, which is this bit here, a 5mm by 5mm square dowel, if the dowel is the correct use of the word, and you glue it on along this bottom edge here of one of your fuselages. This is the right hand side, or if you like the starboard side, and you stop as indicated on the drawing here. So it's full length there. You put your next one on the top of that fuzz bit there, between foreman's 4 all the way through 3 till you reach 2, stop, and then a final one up to the front, then down, and then following that angle there. Now the best way of making sure you don't make it too big or too small or whatever, that gap, is get your former number 2, put it in, make sure you don't glue it in at this point, and then just bring the wood up to either side, or you just mark it as I've done. And the same with formers 4. And it is advisable to give this a bit of a light sanding there so that it goes into that gap, because it is quite a tight snug fit. There you go. Same with former number 2. And then you get hold of former number 1, which, don't forget, will look like this. Okay. Now, while I'm on the subject of former number 1, you'll have this cage part here, and I've taken my motor, which is this 1500 kVA, 30 amp, and the motor, if I haven't already shown you, will be mounted like this. So this sticks out the back. Okay, that's what it looks like, and that will go through the middle there and put across along the top of the box there, and it will look something like that. So that's how I centered mine. I just corner to corner centered like this. Now I'm going to be using 3mm screws. They're going to be 12mm long, and obviously the washers and the nuts as well that go with it. Okay, so let's carry on from there. Now then, you take your fuselage. I like to use spark plug removers. This one is 13/16 for those of you who like it that way. This one's a 5/8, and this one is a 13/16. So this is how I make sure that everything is on the up and up. And I get my right angle here, okay, and then I glue those into place and let them go off for however long it takes for them to go off. And then all you need to do after that is put the port side on, or the left hand side, over the top of that, and then square it off. That's all you got to do. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So here we are. I've glued in former number 4, former number 2, former number 1, and that's what it's going to look like there, like this. Now, more interestingly, if you have the electric version, you'll get this piece of paper, and they've not drawn on where, what have they done with it now? They haven't drawn on where this goes and how that goes. So I've taken all the paint out of it, and I've sketched it on myself. So you'll see there where that motor fits on to that box and goes on to former 1, and that is an exact fit. That's actually how it goes. I've offered it up and everything, measured it, so I've drawn it on there so that you will get a good idea of how it's supposed to look. That would be quite helpful, I think. And the rest of it, this part is broadly how it should be, because it's only the front that's different. So I hope that gives you a good indication of how things are going to be. So the next part really is to offer up the other side. Now, I've not actually tried this yet, so being as I haven't tried it and I'm doing it on camera, it's bound to go wrong. So let's just offer that up and see how it looks. Don't forget, this is a tight fit. That actually looks quite good. That's what you end up with. So what you're going to do now is just make sure it's all square on, and just glue it in place. Then obviously what you've got to do next is put in former 5. Go in there like that, and before you do any of that, chamfer down about 1/2 inch off the inside at the rear here, about 1/2 inch in, chamfer it slightly and chamfer that one slightly, so when you close it up you get like a flat surface here at the end. Okay, so if I hold that together now, former 6, hang on, here we go, just about holds in, and so does form of 5. So it's going to end up looking like that. Okay, and if you've got it looking like that, you're doing well. Now you can see why you stop here with the 5x5 dowel in there, because obviously you don't want that stopping this coming back together. So this is how it's going to look. Let that go now, so those two will fall out naturally. And then this part has to go in this way up, so you've got these notches here. Offer it up from the other side. Don't forget this is not glued on yet, and it should by rights, so get it square on. Go in like that, and you're more or less there. So that's how it goes together, and all you've got to do then is just glue it in. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is all square on before I go any further with that, and then we'll move on to the next part. Right, your model should now look something like this. Okay, it's all been glued in, ready to go. Okay, yeah, you see that? And obviously this is the battery tray, goes in here, and on the drawing this is part 34. Okay, and this is part 35, and don't forget this is former number 1, so when you offer it up to the drawing you'll see a block here, but this is former number 1. Okay, so don't get confused when you want to lay, there's me being prepared, your fuselage onto the drawing, because you've got this nose part at the front. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is get some light sanding paper and just sand the whole thing. Do the whole thing, you know, don't rub it hard or anything, just nice and soft. Rub the whole thing over, get it nice and smooth to the touch, and everything will be square on and as it should be. And because when you come down to sand it again for the final sand, it'll be twice as easy, because when you come to cover it, it'll go on a lot nicer. There'll be no dinks and bumps in it and stuff like that. And while it's like this, you know, while you're still able to do this sort of thing, it's flat, you can work it. Yeah, so just give that a bit of a sanding. Now I was just about to put on former number 3, which is this one, the one you saw that fell off, because I was just messing around with it, and I thought, this seesaws now, how am I going to get that on straight? So I've just got a sanding block, put that under the front like that, and now that's fairly level. And to get this into place, make sure you've marked where that's got to go, because you should have marked everything before you started. And you get your bulkhead number 3, or former number 3, okay, and you get that lined up like that, and you know that 90mm block, put it up like that. It's vertical, so you know they'll all be vertical now. Okay, so I'll glue that in and we'll move on to the next part. Now it's time to fit the servo, but only temporarily, and I'll tell you for why. You need parts 27, this is 27 and this is 27, so there's 2 27s. Okay, and the first one goes in front of former number 3. You then get the servo you intend to use, get the other piece marked 27 and place it as I've done here now, and then just run that servo along so it's not, you know, the servo carrier's not, you know, bent this way or bent that way, so you can get that in any position you like, because you may decide you want it in the middle, you may decide you want it at this end or that end, and don't forget that this is going to be upside down, this way up, like this. Okay, so it goes from the inside out, so you're just using this as a gauge or a guide okay, and then mark those servo carriers, okay, and then just glue them in. Make sure they go on the inside, so they only glue to the 5mm square dowel only, and obviously this side of the former number 3, this gives a bit of strength to former number 3, and then this one accordingly, so that servo will move, and you can screw the servo down from underneath later on. Okay. Hello. I've been away for a week. For you it's just been a split second, I know, and that's the way time travel works, huh? So in that time I have ordered some screws and nuts and washers, and they've arrived, and so I can now carry on with mounting the motor. Now, when it comes to mounting the motor, it does say in the instructions, which I've already checked last week, which for you was a millisecond ago. It says, with the propeller and spinner in place, fit the motor on the mounted motor mount so that the rear of the spinner is 75mm from the rear face of the mount. Position the assembly on the firewall, former number 1, at the best angle to allow the silencer to clear the fuselage side. Drill the bolt holes in the firewall and fit the mount using the T-nuts supplied, securing the nuts with dabs of epoxy. Drill a 3mm diameter hole for the throttle cable and remove the mount. Well, that's the instruction if you're using an IC, a motor, internal combustion. We're using electric, so anyway, you got to go some way with the instructions as they are. So here are, let's see if you can see this here. Okay, I'm bound to drop it. Here are the screws. I've ordered some Phillips heads. Some may call it posi drive. There is a difference between posi drive and Phillips heads. I think the posi drive one is in the cross, and then they have little crosses either corner, so I think this is a posi drive. Somebody out there will correct me, I'm pretty sure of it. And here's my checker for diameters, and indeed they are 3mm, so I'm going to put that away. There you go. And I have my drill bit. Now I've ordered more than what I need because I'm going to be making more models. So I know in the future, if I want these, I have them. I've also ordered them with the security hex on the head there. Sometimes it's an advantage to have them that way. But either way, I have everything that I need. I have lock nuts and everything else. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take this motor mount now and drill those 3mm drill holes. And I need to make sure that on the other side the nuts and bolts can be able to fit in there okay. Now what I will do is once I've got everything mounted all up, is glue the nuts and the washers into place. But before I do that, you need to get your Vaseline or a product of your choice and put Vaseline on the threads. In this way the nuts and the washers will stay in place at some point in the future when you may, for whatever reasons, you've had a sudden stop. We don't have crashes with the Baron flights, we have sudden stops, and you need to make a repair. You know that if you take out the screw, the washer and the nut is going to remain in place, so you don't have to take the whole thing apart and making a small job into a big job. So that's what I'm going to do now, and you'll see me in a second or two. So what I've done is I've put the bolts and the screws and the nuts and the washers on. Just for your interest, these are 3mm thread and they're 12mm long, and I've just put this on dry because I want to make sure that when it goes onto the mount, it goes on square. It's not going to get caught in any corners. I'm not going to get any surprises, you know, everything fits. And now I can take these apart again, apply some Vaseline to the thread and just glue them on, and that's all there is to it. But you know, it's a small thing but an important thing, and I highly recommend that you do this, even if it means having to wait a few days to get things right, because you know, I've been caught out so many times where a screw has come loose or something, you know, and then the nut falls off inside and you've got to get it out, and all these things, you know. And it does happen, vibration can shake these things loose. You can use Loctite, there's nothing wrong with you using Loctite. It's probably even recommended. Sometimes though, you know, you put Loctite on, you can't get the damn thing out. But yeah, maybe a small dab of Loctite is highly desirable. So I'm going to go now and Vaseline these all up. Right, so we've put the propeller on. I've left the labels on just because I've got lots of propellers and I know which one this is. You put the propeller on and the nose cone, and you have the motor there, and you lay them against your drawing. You get your motor mount, which is now looking something like this. You offer that up to the drawing. You offer the motor mount up, okay, something like that, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. And you square everything up, and you'll see if you've done it right. Let me just check I've done it right. That's right, it should be like that. Correct. And let's get this right. Yeah. Okay, so if it's square on, you'll see now that that edge there, the back of the nose cone there, lines up almost exactly with the drawing, so you know that's going to fit. Okay, so you can measure it if you want to, but that's basically what you're going to do. And as I said before, I've drawn that on. On the Messerschmitt drawing, this is shown like this, but on the Mustang drawing, because this is the extra sheet, this is not shown, so I've added that in for clarity. So once you've taken your screws out and you know that the nuts and bolts and so forth are going to stay in place, you haven't got much of a problem. Well, actually got no problem at all, because now you can glue this in place. So I hope that kind of clears things up and takes away any thoughts you may have of not being sure. And I will now go and glue that on. I've just realised my hands were in the way in the last shot, so to clarify, because my hands were in the way, this is the extra sheet of paper you get with the electric plan. This is not shown in the drawing. I've offered this up and added and drawn this in. This is your motor mount with the screws in it, and that goes in that position there like that. So what I was trying to say to you is, because now my hands are not in the way, is that when you add the motor on, yeah, that when you have the spinner on, there's a ply ring here. You see this ply ring, so that the nose cone is in line and doesn't come in contact with that ply. So you offer the whole thing up just so, and you'll find that because the nose cone isn't on now, you can see that where it's going to line up. So that does line up exactly. So that's just for clarity. There you go. Okay, you know that's going to line up. Yeah, I hope that makes some sense. I do apologise, it's not the easiest thing to make videos on your own, and suddenly realise your hands are in the way. So there you go on that one. Well, I'm hoping this part will conclude things with the motor mount. It's just seems to be spent quite a long time with it. So I've taken the screws out of the mount. the nuts and the washers are still in place, and there was no problems, no issues taking the screws out because I put the Vaseline on the threads. So there we go. So what I have done with the rear side of this motor, I just marked the two top ends as being up, because I would like this motor to go in the same position every time, and it should, everything should line up as per always. I've not tried this before, so you know, if you do it for the first time on camera, it will always go wrong. Let's see, let's get that first one in, get it lined up. And it's always best to do a dry fit before you go any further with things, because you know, quite often you glue things in and you know, and you think, oh well, fitted before, but no, you've got to make sure everything fits, because once this is in, it's in. Yeah, so you might think, well, seem to be spending a long time on this sort of stuff, and is it that important? Yes, it is. It is that important, because as you become more proficient with making models, or at least these type of models, you learn by experience, because things don't go right first time every time, although that's what you're trying to achieve. But you need to make sure with things like putting your motor in that everything will fit, because you know, I glued myself to it for that. Because once this mount is in, it's in. You can't muck around with it and say, oh, I want to alter it. It's got to be right. It's got to be right. And just taking those few extra minutes, I'm not going to say seconds, few extra minutes, will ensure that everything is right. Now that's on, and the threads are exactly the right length. They're not sticking out, you know, over threaded. They're exactly right. I'm not going to pinch them up, but they're dead flat level, so they're right. Here's the side view, and this is what it should look like when you've done it. Okay, and obviously you don't want to glue this part in with the engine, or sorry, the motor in place, because it's just not going to end well. But at least you know that that motor now fits, it spins freely, there's nothing catching it, you know, the nut and the washer's not catching anything on this part here, and you know that it fits. So let's see if we can get this the right way around. Pop that in, and there you go. This is obviously, well, all right, I'm telling you, this is the bottom. So you want things to go back the same way. All right, happy with that? Okay, well, I'll glue this on, and then I will move on rapidly to other things with the fuzz. Now, I think this is somewhere around about 30 minutes long, so I'm going to end this part, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay, otherwise the video is going to get too long. Thank you for watching and for your time and your indulgence, and I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching.
Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.